Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. The declassification of the Bose files on Saturday hasn't resolved the controversy surrounding his death. It continues to rage, with some convinced he died in an air crash in Taipei in August 1945, whilst others are adamant the crash didn't happen and that's not how he died. But now there's also a new controversy about a letter Jawaharlal Nehru allegedly wrote calling Bose a war criminal. Several versions of the letter have surfaced in the Bose files and also on the net. But are they credible or are they phonies? Those are the key questions we shall answer tonight. My guests are Harvard University's Gardner Professor of History and Subhash Bose's grandnephew Shaugato Bose, the Vice-Chancellor of Ashoka University and author of Nehru and Bose, Rudrangshu Mukherjee, the author of India's biggest cover-up and a scholar who refuses to accept that Bose died in an air crash, Anuj Dhar, and Professor of History from Jawaharlal Nehru University and former Director of the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, Mridula Mukherjee. Rudrangshu Mukherjee, you're a historian who's written... Oh, I've got Shaugato Bose. Let me start with you, sir. Shaugato Bose, as a historian who's written one of the key books on your grand-uncle Subhash Chandra Bose, you've always believed that he died in an air crash in Taipei on the 18th of August 1945. How much corroboration do you get from the files that the government declassified on Saturday?
My book was, of course, focused on the life of Subhash Chandra Bose, but I did address the question of his mortal end in the last chapter, and I get corroboration in the sense that there is no contradiction of all the eyewitness accounts that I have cited in that final chapter. There were 7 survivors of the air crash, and I have seen testimonies of 6 of those survivors. I have read the testimonies of the doctors who attended to Netaji on the 18th of August 1945, and the most compelling is the interpreter, Juiki Nakamura's testimony of the final hours of Netaji in the hospital and his cremation. It is a rather graphic account, but it shows that Netaji showed great fortitude in his final hours before he passed away, fighting for his country's freedom. And what the files show is that every prime minister, from Nehru to Manmohan Singh, believed that he died in the air crash. All the top officials of the government accepted it. It's just that they did not take the final step of bringing back Netaji's mortal remains because of opposition from certain fringe political groups, and also, sadly, occasionally from 1 or 2 unreasonable members of the family. I went around the National Archives today. It is quite a good exhibition of the files, and I tried to read as much as possible. And the weight of evidence suggests that there is corroboration that he died in the air crash of 18th August 1945.
Anuj Dhar, on the other, let me stop you there, Professor Bose. Let me bring in the others. Anuj Dhar, on the other hand, you've always maintained that the air crash did not happen, that Bose did not die in Taipei. Now, how do you stand up that position, A, in the face of the recent material released by www.bosefiles.info, and secondly, after Captain Nakamura's eyewitness testimony has been released by the government, which gives details of Bose's last hours, including his alleged last words? Oh, we don't seem to have Anuj Dhar at that critical point, which is rather sad. But just for the sake of the audience, Anuj Dhar's position, and we will get him back to explain this himself, is that in fact no such air crash took place in Taipei on the 18th of August 45. Bose didn't die in that air crash. Bose in fact lived, and Anuj believes that Bose went into Manchuria and then into Russia, and we then lost trace of him. Unfortunately, we don't have Anuj at this moment to say that himself. We will get him back, and he will stand up that very viewpoint. But in the meantime, Rudrangshu Mukherjee, we have 2 polar opposite views. There's Professor Shaugato Bose, the Gardner professor from Harvard and Subhash Chandra Bose's nephew, who believes that Bose died in a plane crash on the 18th of August 1945. And then there's Anuj Dhar, who's convinced that no such crash took place, that Bose lived for years, presumably in Russia. As a historian who's independently written on Bose, who do you agree with?
I agree wholeheartedly with Sugato Bose, and I dare say before Sugato wrote his book with the views of Lenny Gordon, who unfortunately no TV, even though he's now around in India, no TV channel or no newspaper is actually talking to. Lenny Gordon went around the world and was the first to interview the survivors, to take the testimony, and to arrive at the conclusion that Bose indeed did die in that air crash in Taipei. And the entire documentation is given in Lenny Gordon's book, Brothers Against the Raj. And it's that beacon light that which Sugato in his book, a rather masterly book I must add, and I in my book have followed to establish the fact that Bose did die in that fatal air crash.
Okay, we've got Anuj Dhar back.
As
Let me stop you.
historical evidence stands, Karan, let me complete that. As historical evidence stands, as distinct from speculation, Bose did die in that air crash.
Okay, I've got Anuj Dhar back. Anuj Dhar, you've always maintained, oh, we've lost Anuj Dhar again. We seem to have terrible problems with Anuj Dhar. Perhaps that's an indication from God that we're not going to get Anuj's viewpoint from Anuj's mouth. I'm going to have to keep saying it on his behalf. Mridula Mukherjee, Ashish Ray's website, www.bosefiles.info, not only has graphic accounts of the plane crash on the 18th and the injuries that Bose suffered given by his ADC Colonel Rahman with him, but it also has eyewitness accounts from at least 5 different people who were present in the room at the Nanmon Military Hospital when Bose died. These 5 include Captain Yoshimi, the medical officer in charge, Dr. Suruta, a Japanese doctor, Captain Nakamura, the Taiwanese translator who in fact Professor Sugato Bose referred to a moment ago, as well as the Taiwanese nurse who treated Bose. Now, as a historian, what's your assessment of the evidence they give of the last hours and death of Subhash Chandra Bose?
Well, I think the evidence is overwhelming, and I'd like to add my voice to Sugato Bose as well as Rudrangshu, fellow historians, and I think all the historians on your panel are agreed on this. And I would also like to say that indeed Lenny Gordon's work, which came out in the 90s, corroborated all this beyond any doubt. Then Sugato did a wonderful job. And I'd also like to draw your attention, apart from this website, to an interview which Anita Bose Pfaff, gave 3 years ago to the IIC quarterly, to the historian Sucheta Mahajan, in which she has extensively talked about her own interactions with people who were eyewitnesses and how she was completely convinced about the fact of the air crash and the subsequent death due to burns. Anita Pfaff also calls in 2 days ago in the Hindustan Times, she calls these theories which are put out asinine. Now,
Okay.
she is Netaji's daughter. We keep talking about Netaji's family. I think we must understand, and she's a very fine scholar to boot. You know, she's a professional economist. So here's somebody who has a personal, she's the only heir, you know, and we are not giving enough importance to what she believes, because she's been dealing with this whole issue for the last
Absolutely.
2 years.
Can I stop you there? There's no doubt that there's no doubt that a lot of weight must be given. No, let me finish this. No, there's no doubt that a lot of weight must be given to what a daughter thinks about how her father died, but that doesn't necessarily mean the daughter is correct. There's an emotional reason for accepting it, not necessarily a rational and logical one, always. Let me for a moment, in the absence, unfortunately, of Anuj Dhar, play devil's advocate. Sugato Bose, some support for the belief that Subhash Bose, your uncle, didn't die in that air crash in 45 comes from a letter Amiyanath Bose wrote to Sisir Kumar Bose in November 1949, which talks of strange radio broadcasts from an entity called Netaji Subhash Chandra Transmitter Katha Bolte Chhe Chin, if I'm pronouncing Bengali correctly. What do you make of that sort of evidence that's often cited by your relatives who disagree with you?
Well, this is again in the realm of rumor and speculation, as Rudrangshu was saying. And my father, Shishir Kumar Bose, was in prison in Lalpur in Punjab when he got the news of his uncle's death in the Tribune newspaper. Both he and my grandfather Sharat Bose, who was a prisoner in South India, accepted it initially. Now, of course, they tried to hope against hope that maybe Netaji had made another great escape. But once all of the testimony was collected by the Shahnawaz Committee of Inquiry in 1956, my father really did not have very much doubt at all. Now, you're referring to Juiki Nakamura's testimony. He gave it to the Shahnawaz Inquiry Committee in 1956. Unfortunately, the government did not send my father the transcript, but he contacted Nakamura directly and was able to get the full testimony. And then my father went in 1965 to Japan and Taiwan, cross-checked everything, because if there was any one weakness in the Shahnawaz inquiry was that the committee did not go to Taiwan because we did not have diplomatic relations with them. But my father cross-checked all of the testimony that he had read of the actual witnesses, and from 1965 he had absolutely no doubt in his mind that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, as he used to put it, died a martyr's death fighting for his country's freedom.
Tell me about this so-called radio broadcast from this entity called Netaji Subhash Chandra Transmitter Katha Bolte Chhe Chin, which was apparently written about by Amiyanath Bose to your father Sisir Kumar Bose in November 49. Who or what is this entity? Did it exist? Does it amount to evidence that suggests that Bose was trying to broadcast in some fashion to India? Or is it all a concoction, speculation, rumor and baloney?
I think it's in the realm of rumor and speculation. Yes, my uncle was writing to my father, who was then a medical student, advanced medical student in the UK, but there was no corroboration that you know, such a radio station at all existed, or that there was a transmitter. I'd also like to add, you mentioned that Netaji's daughter could be emotional, but she was actually quite rational. She was with Leonard Gordon, the biographer who wrote before me, and present in 1979 in Tokyo when Lenny Gordon interviewed 3 Japanese survivors of the air crash. In fact, Lenny asked my aunt, do you want to sit in and listen? Because it's pretty graphic that your father was badly injured. He had a head injury, he was badly burnt, but my aunt, who is very rational, sat through those interviews, and both Leonard Gordon and my aunt Anita were convinced that these survivors who had burned themselves from that air accident was telling the truth.
I'm going to stop you there, Professor Bose, because I now have Anuj in studio. In all fairness, I should give him a chance to put his side of the story, because up to now we've been questioning it and in fact undermining its claim to be truthful. Let me come to you. We have www.bosefiles.info releasing a whole lot of material in the last 1 month, which they believe irrefutably substantiates that Bose died in an air crash on the 18th of August 45 as a result of the injuries he suffered in that crash. And now you have eyewitness accounts such as Captain Nakamura's released by the government. In the face of that, your position is the opposite, that there was no air crash in Taipei.
Yes.
Bose didn't die as a result of that air crash. How do you maintain that position when you've got all these eyewitness accounts to the contrary?
First of all, you need to ask this gentleman who's talking.
Forget, answer my question.
I'm answering question because he's talking about my father knew this, my father knew that. Ask him.
Answer my question. Look, listen to me. I'm asking. Listen to me.
Okay.
I am not encouraging you to quarrel.
Okay.
I'm asking you a specific question.
Yes.
Please answer it.
Yes.
The question is this. You have always maintained that Bose did not die in that air crash.
I still do.
That he somehow survived.
Yes.
And there was no air crash.
No, there was no air crash.
Now, Ashish Bose's website has given evidence and eyewitness accounts, as has the government released something similar.
That's all been gone into. See, the point is that they are missing the whole point. They quoting from Shahnawaz committee's report is no big deal. That report Mr. Ashish is quoting is all available here. All these documents, nothing new. All these documents.
But why don't you believe them? Is the question.
I don't believe because the government doesn't believe in them.
Is that the reason? Because the government doesn't believe, you don't believe. So if the government did believe, would you believe?
It's not a question only. The point is that the courts did not believe. All these people, all those people who made a statement, look, there was a plane crash and he died. There were so many contradictions. There were so many.
Which courts are you talking about did not believe?
Calcutta High Court. a submission was made by the then government of Mr. Devi Gowda that we don't go by this version. The same stand was repeated by the government of India until 2005. Mr. Manmohan Singh was in power.
I'm summarizing your position is twofold.
The government itself was not sure of Subhash Bose's death.
So your position...
This gentleman
just a moment. Let's not talk about this person. I want you to talk about your position.
Yes.
You say you don't believe the information collated by Ashish Ray, the information...
Ashish Ray is nobody. He's a nobody. I don't believe what the government says. Ashish Ray is a non-entity in the whole thing.
You don't believe either what the government files have revealed or what Ashish's information has revealed for two reasons. A, because the government doesn't believe it, and B, because the courts didn't believe it. Is that right?
Yes, obviously.
So just a moment.
Who will decide whether there's an evidence or not? Is it court?
So your position is your position that air crash never happened?
Never happened. Taiwan government told me that.
The Taiwan government told you?
Yes, obviously. I approached them. Formally, the letter was written to them. The answer came to me.
That no such air crash took place.
Taiwan government is far more credible than this gentleman.
You have a letter from the Taiwan government?
Definitely, it's part of record.
What is the date of that letter?
That is 2003 when I received it.
So in 2003, the Taiwan government wrote
formally informed me there was no plane crash in Taiwan.
Just a moment. Let me go on that point to Shaukat Bose. Shaukat Bose, how do you answer this? That the Taiwan government in 2003 apparently formally wrote to Anurudhar to deny that an air crash had happened on the 18th of August 1945. And if that air crash didn't happen, then clearly Subhash Bose couldn't have died in that air crash either. How do you respond to that point? It's based on a formal letter Anurudhar has got from the Taiwanese government.
Email.
Email, he says.
Formal email, part of the commission report.
The Taiwan government did not have records of the air crash.
No.
If you know the history of that period, Taiwan was under Japanese military occupation when the air crash happened. This was during the dying days of the war, and the Japanese did not relinquish control over Taiwan until the spring of 1946. The genealogy of the current Taiwanese government can be traced to Chiang Kai-shek coming to Taiwan after the Communist Revolution in 1949. So, in fact, it is not surprising at all that the Taiwan government did not have any records of that crash.
Okay.
However, the Japanese government has maintained since August 1945 that this crash took place. General Shideya, top-ranking Japanese general, died in that crash. And if you look at his war record, which the Shanawaz Inquiry Committee was able to locate, it says Shideya died at Taihoku Aerodrome on the 18th of August 1945. The cause was death by war. It was the same with Netaji.
Please do not interrupt. Please do not interrupt.
No,
will you stop interrupting?
Not fair.
Will you stop interrupting? He didn't interrupt you. You shouldn't interrupt him. Sudhanshu Mukherjee, one other reason cited by some people for believing that Bose didn't die on the 18th of August 1945 is that the British continued to correspond about how they should handle Bose right up till the 23rd of August, which is 5 days after the date of his death, if the date of his death is to be the 18th of August. I'm referring to an exchange of letters between Moody, the Home Member of the India Office in London, and Jenkins, the Home Secretary and later Governor of Punjab in India. Does the fact that these two men were corresponding about how to handle Bose right up till the 23rd of August suggest that Bose didn't die on the 18th, or simply that they didn't know about the crash which allegedly killed him? Which of the two would you say it would be?
Yeah, I think given the context of the dying days of the war and the sort of time lag in the transmission of information, it is quite possible that these two people didn't have the complete information of what had happened on the 18th of August 1945, and they were still speculating about how to handle this man. I don't think that's conclusive evidence at all.
Okay, let me come back to you, Anurudhar. You maintain that the air crash didn't happen, that Bose didn't die in the air crash.
Yes.
What then happened to Bose?
My first submission, first of all these people, all this...
No, will you answer my question? I don't have time to make political points about others. They're not making political points about you. Stick to my questions, please.
Sir, there have been a commission of inquiry into the matter. 1999, Justice Mukherjee commission was set. If people knew everything, why didn't they come and depose before the commission? Please answer my
question. You're a scholar, you've written a book, it's called India's Biggest Cover-Up.
Yes.
You're saying to me you don't believe the crash happened on the 18th of August. What happened to Bose?
When the news of Subhash Bose's death came, it was not believed by the British government.
What happened happened to Bose?
Thereafter, they inquired. They set up a committee under the IB, and W. McRae was in charge of this combined section. They looked into it. The final report is available. National
No,
Archive.
will you answer my question? You're blinding me with irrelevant details. What happened to Bose?
I'm giving you the answer from the archive. The report says that he's most likely in Russia.
He's in Russia?
Yes.
How long did he live? Or is he still alive?
The report there talks only up to, this is 46. I'm talking about the report, 46.
And you believe that he went to Russia?
I believe that was Russia.
Tell me this
For several reasons. I don't believe I go by the evidence.
If you believe he went to Russia, answer this to me. Why did he not ever return to India? And secondly, why was he never seen by anyone?
No, people have claimed. In fact, if anybody was in position to know that Subhash was alive after 1945, it was Sharat Chandra Bose's brother, Shogata's grandfather. Now, Sharat Chandra Bose made clear statements that my brother is alive, and he...
Yeah, but hang on a second. How come no one saw Bose?
So people have made this claim they saw him.
Who saw him?
There are people, in fact, that's what I'm saying.
And why did he not return to India?
Why that's a matter to be looked into.
Isn't that a bit bizarre?
It's a bizarre, of course, but there are reports.
Who saw him alive after 45?
The Russian, your ambassador in Tehran talked about.
India's ambassador to Tehran?
Russian ambassador in Tehran talks about Subhash Bose being alive. That's
but
part
hang on
of
a
the
second,
reports
talking about Bose being alive is different to seeing him.
Why would the Russian ambassador
Has anyone seen him alive after the 18th of August?
There are people who have claimed yes.
Who are those people?
For example, there's a gentleman who appeared before commission on oath. He said that I went to Russia, I met...
Who's he? Name him.
His name is Mr. Sarkar.
Mr. Sarkar?
Yes.
What Sarkar?
Somebody
who is this Mr. Sarkar?
A witness who appeared before commission on oath. He gave witness. He is not somebody
where
who
did he appear and where did he give this oath?
Before commission, I think 2002, 3 or 3.
Shogata Bose, do you believe that there are people who have seen your uncle alive after the 18th of August 45? Do you believe in this Mr. Sarkar? Do you believe in people in Russia sighting and seeing him, even though no one else has seen and sighted him?
Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was never seen after 18th of August 1945. Of course, there have been the unlikeliest of sightings that have been reported, and many fantastic stories have been told to various commissions, but there is not a single shred of evidence to suggest that he succeeded in reaching Soviet territory.
I want to bring
and
you
also in relation to your earlier question.
Yes, carry on. In relation to my earlier question.
The Domain News Agency broadcast the news of his death. The Domain News Agency of Japan broadcast the news of his death on 23rd of August of 1945, exactly the day that Moody was speculating on what to do with Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose.
In other words, if Moody had been listening to Japanese broadcast, he would have realized his correspondence was already now pointless because the man he was corresponding about was dead. Mridula Mukherjee, there are some fanciful theories.
It was exactly on that day
that Bose became a prisoner in a Russian gulag camp, or that he returned to India and lived in disguise as Gumnami Baba. Do you believe any of these theories have any credibility whatsoever?
I'm afraid not. I'm very categorical that these are all, as I said, fanciful theories, born the best of intentions. You can say people had such love and regard for Bose that they didn't want to believe that he had died. I just want to mention one thing. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, as Prime Minister of India, visited Japan 2002 and went to the Renkoji temple to pay his respects. Did he or did he not believe that Bose had died and his ashes were there?
Absolutely.
So
that is a clear indication of what Mr. Vajpayee believed. Unfortunately, you can't make that proof that those ashes are genuinely Bose's ashes, because that may be a leap too far. But leave that aside. I want to come back before I take a break to this critical question. If you are absolutely convinced that Bose did not die on the 18th of August 45 in that crash, why has no one really credibly cited him, and why did he never return to India? Just answer those two questions.
I said there are 3 theories of what happened to Subhash Bose. A, the plane crash theory. Second theory, that he died in Russia. The third, he was in India in Faizabad. I support the third one. For simple
that he was in Faizabad?
Yes. See, it's scientifically impossible for someone to copy your handwriting in 2 languages.
What was he doing in Faizabad?
That's another big story for you. Need a big program for that.
How do you know he was in Faizabad?
I know because the handwriting expert opinion is there. The Allahabad High Court has given verdict in his favor in 2013.
How do handwriting experts come into the picture? Explain that to me.
Who will decide whether there is evidence or not? Judges or journalists?
Well, historians,
There
and you
is
claim to be a scholar, and that's why I'm asking you.
I'm giving the answer. The answer is that in 1985, when this fellow died, there was a controversy. Journalists wrote about it. Then Subhash's niece comes, Lalita Bose. She identifies objects as her uncle's, files a suit in court of law, and that court order gives order in 2013.
And you believe Bose came to Faizabad?
I go by the court order. I go by the court. I don't believe. I believe the court order.
The court doesn't say he went to Faizabad.
The court says that. You're not informed properly.
The court says he went to Faizabad. All right, the court says he went to Faizabad.
2013.
If the court says he went to Faizabad, then it's a leap of faith. You have to believe what your judges say. But welcome back. You're watching To The Point, and we're discussing what the Subhash Chandra Bose papers declassified on Saturday have revealed. Professor Mridula Mukherjee, let's come to a second controversy. It's the alleged letter written supposedly by Nehru in December 1945 to Clement Attlee, the then Prime Minister of Britain, where Nehru allegedly calls Bose a war criminal. Now, do you believe that letter is authentic and genuine, or do you think it's a phony?
I think it's complete phony. There's so much internal evidence which suggests that it could not be a letter written by Jawaharlal Nehru. The spelling is all wrong. There's no signature. The origin of this letter is in the form, actually it has come out now in this. Firstly, let me say, this letter was not discovered 2 days ago. It has been out in the public domain, on social media, in the newspapers a few months ago. So there's nothing new about this letter. What is new is that it is now clear that it came into the files in the form of a complaint or evidence by somebody who was wanting to push this theory that there was some typist in Meerut who claims that he typed this letter at some minister's house where Nehru turned up and pulled out a note from his pocket. I mean, the whole story is fanciful. And the inauthentic part, or the fake part, is this letter which has been circulated is actually a photograph of a part of that letter.
Okay.
Which has been put into the file. So I think the whole thing is a fraud, it's a put-up job. And also I want to point out to you, one day before the files were released, that is 2 days ago, one day before that again this letter had come out onto the social media.
Okay, Shaugata Bose, there are several...
there's a clear-cut political angle over here.
Shaugata Bose, there are several versions of this letter doing the rounds, and as Mridula Mukherjee says, it's been doing the rounds for several months, and it actually came into the public domain through the social network well before the files were released on Saturday. These multiple versions of this letter have grammatical and typographical errors. Secondly, the English is clearly not Nehru's. But worst of all, one version published by the Times of India yesterday has the Downing Street address put down to just Down Street, not Downing Street. Bose's and Nehru's names are misspelled. In another version of the letter published by the Pioneer yesterday, Nehru addresses the British Prime Minister as Attlee, not even Mr. Attlee. What do you make of all of those incredible errors?
Well, for all the reasons that you cite, this is obviously a fake. And most important is that this is not Nehru's English. And that's why we have to be very careful about those who have given evidence before various commissions. The origin of this letter apparently goes back to someone who claimed that such a letter had been dictated to him by Nehru. And we don't have to take every statement given to a commission as gospel truth.
Absolutely.
In fact, the most fantastic stories were entertained, particularly by the last commission. And also, today I went around the National Archives and read all of Nehru's notes and letters that were signed by him. And he comes out very well. Nehru and Bose were close friends. And Subhash Bose was by Kamala Nehru's bedside when she died. The Bose and Nehru were together in the sanatorium, and so he must have remembered that, and I feel so grateful that Nehru set up a trust fund for his friend and comrade's daughter so that she had a good education.
Let's stick Shaugata Bose to this letter. We don't have time to talk about the wider relationship between Bose and Nehru, although undoubtedly the wider relationship would help answer the question, would Nehru have ever called Bose a war criminal? Given that wider relationship, it's unlikely, if not impossible, to believe Nehru would have ever called him a war criminal. But Rudrangshu Mukherjee, sticking narrowly to this letter, it appears that in fact this letter comes into existence when a gentleman called Shyam Lal Jain, who in testimony given to the Khosla Commission in 1970 swore an affidavit claiming that in 1945, i.e. 25 years earlier, Nehru had dictated this letter to him at the home of Asif Ali. Now, first of all, do you believe that it's acceptable that a man will suddenly remember the existence of a letter 25 years later, never having once mentioned it in the intervening 25 years, and then secondly, he will recount it accurately from memory? Or is that just too much of a leap of faith?
It is too much of a leap of faith to believe. To accept this letter as genuine, one will also have to accept that Nehru never went to Harrow, never went to Trinity College, Cambridge, and never wrote the autobiography of the discovery of India. It's not a letter written by a man who knew how to write English.
Okay. Now, the other perplexing thing about Shamlal's affidavit is that he never mentioned any of this when Nehru was alive.
Yes, indeed.
And had he done so, presumably Nehru would have either contradicted him or agreed with him. But his silence makes it seem that he deliberately kept quiet because he was scared Nehru would knock the story on his head and his story would fade away. Second Nehru was dead, he comes up with it and swears an affidavit. Do you attach any credibility to Shamlal Jain's affidavit?
I don't attach. Not at all. In fact, I asked the British government way back in 2007, 8, I don't know which year was it, but I did ask them categorically, do you have any such letter? So I got an answer from the Cabinet Office, they have no such thing.
So you think Shamlal Jain's letter is a concoction?
Obviously concoction. This thing which is doing around for many years on internet, it's all fake.
It's complete fake.
Complete fake.
So the testimony he gave to the
researcher
Khosla,
pay any attention to anything.
So the testimony he gave to the Khosla Commission about this particular point is rubbish as far as
No, I'm not saying rubbish. That's up to the court to decide. So I mean, but
you think the letter is phony?
I think it's not credible.
It's not credible.
Definitely not.
Very, very quickly, Shaukat Bose, because time is our enemy, and I implore you for a brief answer. The affidavits given by Shamlal Jain to the Khosla Commission also go beyond claiming that this letter is authentic. Apparently, Shamlal Jain also told Khosla that Nehru dictated a note, a separate note, which said that Bose flew from Saigon on the 23rd of August 45, i.e. 5 days after that crash on the 18th when he died, to Dairen in Manchuria. And Shamlal claims that Bose said in this note that from Manchuria, Bose traveled by jeep with the same General Shady you referred to a moment ago towards Russia. And Shamlal believes this is proof that Bose didn't die in the crash and actually proves that Bose went to Russia and disappeared there. How do you respond to that second note? Shaukat Bose?
Well, the answer is very clear. Subhash Chandra Bose flew on the 17th of August from Saigon, stopped for the night in Da Nang, and then the next day he flew to Taipei. He was trying to go with General Shide to Dairen in Manchuria, or alternative to Tokyo, but he did not reach because his plane crashed on the 18th of August of 1945. And there are numerous eyewitness accounts which corroborate that event, the sad and tragic event that took place. And also the Russians, I just saw the Russian replies today in the archives.
This second note dictated by Shamlal Jain is also rubbish.
Absolute rubbish, and there was a lot of rubbish that was presented to both commissions, Khosla Commission and the Mukherjee Commission.
Absolutely, but
many fantastic stories were told.
I'm interrupting you, Shaukat Bose, because this is a critical point that I want to put to Anuj Dhar. Anuj Dhar, you a moment ago said to me that the Shamlal Jain affidavit claiming that Nehru had written a letter to Attlee where he called Bose a war criminal was rubbish. It's not true. It's not corroborated.
It's not credible.
It's not credible. However, there is this second note Shamlal Jain has given the Khosla Commission where he says that Nehru told him that Bose had on the 23rd of August flown from Saigon to Dairen and then gone in a jeep with General Shede to Russia. Now, separately, earlier you've told me that you believe Bose did go to Russia.
Yes, you are.
Here now is Shamlal Jain saying that along with General Shede, the Japanese general, Bose went to Russia. Do you believe this second part of Shamla?
I really see. If I don't believe Mr. Jain, I don't believe him. But
so you don't believe this either?
No, I do believe that he was in Russia because there are independent evidence supporting that.
But not Jain's witness.
See, the Jain witness is not credible. So what if this gentleman has made himself, is making such statements? Obviously, I can't, go by his words.
One last question, Shaukat Bose, and I'm going to have to end the show because we're running out of time. Given the weight of the testimony from 5 to 6 different eyewitnesses, people like Colonel Rahman, who was his ADC, Captain Nakamura, Captain Yoshimi, right, Dr. Suruta, none of whom have any reason to lie. Why are there people in your family? Forget about others and scholars like Anuj Dhar. Why are there people in your family who don't want to believe the story of the air crash and the deaths that followed, and instead believe in conspiracy theories and perhaps even the belief that he lived and is still alive? Why is that the case? But answer briefly, please.
Well, family membership counts for nothing. Individual credentials matter. And I can't say why others don't believe in this. Everybody is free to believe what he or she wants. It is all based on unsupported feelings. So I would say that even Gandhi initially hoped that Netaji had not died in the air crash, but when presented with the evidence, he changed his mind. And I hope that people will see the evidence, read the evidence carefully. There are not just 5 or 6, about 10 direct eyewitness accounts of 6 survivors, at least 2 doctors, 1 interpreter, and so on. And we should be mature enough to accept the mortal end of somebody who will remain a deathless hero for Indians.
Absolutely. That is perhaps the point that people should listen to. Be rational about it and accept the facts, even if in accepting them, you have to accept something that you truly wish hadn't ever happened. The truth has to be greater than your wish that it should be otherwise. My thanks to all my guests for joining me, and I'm glad that Anuj Dhar was able to join us. I'm sorry he couldn't join us earlier. He was stuck in terrible traffic in Delhi. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.
MLA Sarfaraz Alam, along with his 2 associates, have been granted bail. However, they have been asked to cooperate with the investigation and their passports have been seized. The JDU lawmaker was...
Hello.